What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host, joined by John Breech for a rather unfortunate emergency podcast. Can't even do a siren noise for this one because it's so hard to believe. But Aaron Rodgers, the New York Jets quarterback, Breech, suffered what is being called an ankle injury for right now by the New York Jets. He was ruled out, suffered it in the fourth snap of the Jets season on, of course, 9/11, with the Jets in Jersey playing the Bills on Monday Night Football in one of the most anticipated and biggest games of the year. Rodgers had said, you don't grow up and dream about playing at 1 o'clock. You dream about playing Monday Night Football. He was traded from the Packers to the Jets this offseason, and in 4 snaps, his night was ended. And there is certainly fear around the Jets that it could be worse. I don't know how to set the scene. I mean, sort of the scene itself was just really surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. Surreal is the perfect word, because remember, this game started with Aaron Rodgers running out of the locker room with the American flag, running out onto the field. And look, I have not seen a Jets crowd like this at MetLife Stadium since I've been working at CBS. So over 10 years where you've just seen a crowd that was insane, that bonkers, that ecstatic. Everyone in that stadium was fired up to see Aaron Rodgers play. And once he went down, it was a little confusing because he went down, then he stood up for about 5 seconds, and then realized I think something's wrong, and then sat back down. And then you kind of saw the crowd realize what was happening. And then you have near silence, and to hear 80,000 people just go silent like that was the surreal part. That was, oh my God, this looks like something serious. And like you said, Brinson, it happened on the 4th snap before probably some people even got in their seat. And, if he's out for any extended period of time, you really feel like the Jets season went from high hopes, we're Super Bowl contenders, to now we're battling the Cardinals for the top pick in the draft.
Yeah. And I mean, not to make it about the day in particular, but it was in New Jersey, just miles from New York City, on a day that is, 9/11, what it's remembered for, and it being the standalone game. And as you pointed out, Rodgers comes out with the American flag, and we're not there, but Scott Van Pelt and Ryan Clark and Adam Schefter at halftime discussed it, and I think Joe Buck and Troy Aikman pointed out as well. It's the energy in that place was just really hard to describe, just how enthusiastic and overpowered, just emotional, and how everything was, and how excited Jets fans were for this moment in this game. And then to have Rodgers on the 4th snap, he went over one incomplete pass, attempted one pass to go out like that. And you're right, when he went down, you saw he got sacked, and there was a moment where you're like, okay, and he stood back up, and then you're like, wait, why is he back on the ground? I just saw him standing up. It looked like he was a little banged up. That's the scary part to me, is that that is, along with, and Adam Schefter mentioned this at halftime, it's just something that people in the league were talking about, and you can see it on the replays, but the quiver in his calf, which is the concern that it could be something else. And we don't want to play Twitter doctors, but the Jets did x-rays on the ankle. It was negative. The word that nobody wants to hear is Achilles, which is something I don't believe that you can hear on. Yeah, and you can see if you're watching on YouTube, the way that the left leg ends up being planted is just not good. And this was I put in a tweet in Slack. It's somebody's 2.5 hours till something horrible happens to Aaron Rodgers on this MetLife turf in the rain. So because it was rainy, and there's all kinds of concerns for the long term. But just for right now, what we know is Rodgers was then helped to the sideline. He went to the blue medical tent. They didn't really show much of that. He goes in the blue medical tent, and they're checking him out. And at this point, a cart comes over to the blue medical tent, which is I had the Manning cast on and then the regular cast on a separate television, but Peyton Manning, and Eli are losing their minds because they can't believe what's happening. The cart comes over. Rodgers comes out, gets on the cart. They take him to the entrance to the tunnel to go back to the locker rooms. And he is limping badly off the cart, walking back there. He goes back, later seen getting on and off a cart, wearing a walking boot, and very quickly.
Real quick, keep in mind, though, that when he was in the blue tent and after he left the blue tent, he had not been ruled out of the game at that point.
Correct.
So that left that kind of intriguing, maybe it's not as bad as it looked, just because, hey, look, the doctors looked at him and they still said he was questionable. And so, yeah,
Yes,
keep going.
right.
So then he goes onto the golf cart into.
Well, and when he was, it was like Aaron Rodgers was questionable with an ankle injury. And at that point, I think Peyton said this best, but it was like everybody's sort of thinking he comes out with it taped up and keeps playing. And Zach Wilson's in the game. He goes back to the locker room. Later seen, I know Mike Garafolo of NFL Media, who was on site, reported that he was in the walking boot. ESPN cameras caught him in that walking boot. And he goes in the locker room, and the Jets tweet out that he's been downgraded to out with a note that the X-rays were negative. We say this a lot when we talk about injuries on here, but it's just the unfortunate nature of it. When you see an injury happen like that, especially if it's like somebody who's maybe older, especially if it's like that sort of situation, and at 8:33 they tweet that he's questionable return, and then at 9:03, just 30 minutes later, he's ruled out, but his X-rays are negative. That's a really bad sign. Like, and you see that on here, you can see the 9:03 in the 2 hours. It's 8:33 and 9:03 if you're watching on YouTube. Like, that is a big concern to rule out a quarterback of Rodgers' nature in this huge of a game that quickly with, and I don't want to say just an ankle injury, because it could be a high ankle sprain, which would keep him out for a few weeks, more than likely. But to be ruled out that quickly is definitely a big concern, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head with mentioning the high ankle sprain or the Achilles. I mean, those are your probably best case scenario, worst case scenario, where you're going to miss a few weeks in the best case scenario, worst case scenario, you're out for the season. So that is just the worst possible. If you would ask the Jets fan, the worst possible thing that could have happened at this game, this is it. I mean, you can't have, this is the whole offseason. That's all anyone talked about was Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't Jets fans. It was media. It was everyone. This is the guy that's going to get to the Jets to the playoffs for the first time since 2010. This is the team that has the longest drought without a playoff appearance in the NFL right now. And this was their chance to put themselves back in the upper echelon of the NFL. And now, they pan the crowd. Yeah, Jets fans just, flopping middle fingers.
One guy flipping into somebody else. I was flipped off the camera too.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's how these people feel right now, and it's completely understandable. So it's just been, I mean, you said at the beginning, surreal is a great way to describe it.
I do think, and I don't want to harp on the Jets for this, but I do think it matters for the long haul, because we talked about this all offseason when discussing the Jets, future potential for the season, that there's offensive line concerns on this team, right? I mean, this team had offensive line concerns to begin with. The Bills have a pretty good pass rush, but not like this, insane pass rush, I don't think. And the fact that, especially with Von Miller out, Leonard Floyd got to him on the play in question. But I think that is, and I don't want to harp on the Dodgers or anything like that, but it's like everyone's penciling the Jets in for this playoff spot and saying, all right, this offense is going to be incredible with Aaron Rodgers upgrading from Zach Wilson. And with that defense, it'd be impossible for this team not to be really, really good this year. And they were Super Bowl contenders coming into the season. They absolutely were contenders to win the AFC South, of the AFC East, excuse me. That wasn't out of the question at all. But I think from a macro perspective and analyzing the Jets' potential for this season, the fact that Rodgers dealt with that kind of pressure that early in this game, when you have all the time to prepare, absolutely is a case where you have to wonder, is that offensive line a bigger concern for the entire season, or as long as Aaron Rodgers is, or is there anybody's there?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. That was the concern, the major concern of when people were talking about, hey, can this team win a Super Bowl? It was, well, if Aaron Rodgers and his 39-year-old body can survive behind this offensive line, which struggled last year and wasn't expected to be much better this year. And we kind of saw that. I mean, yes, Rodgers was only on the field for 4 plays behind them, but he was pressured on almost every single one of the plays, except for the first down where he handed off to Breece Hall for 26 yards. The only reason there wasn't pressure there is because it was a run play. So,
right.
And that you could just kind of feel the thinking of everyone where, wow, if this is what Aaron Rodgers, this is the kind of pressure he's going to be facing the entire season, this team might struggle a little bit, at least out of the gate. When you look at, hey, they're facing the Bills in week 1, potentially would have been facing the Cowboys in week 2. That's what Rodgers and the offensive line would have been looking at. So yeah, the offensive line was absolutely a weak link, and, they haven't looked great, but, offensive lines can gel throughout the season. Sometimes they get hot. We saw it the Bengals last year struggled offensive line the first 4 or 5 games, and then just no one could get through them later in the season. So it happens. But yeah, definitely that was an issue.
And I think too, just speaking about the personnel and everything, and we don't want to get into the game itself because it's, we'll probably be done recording before it's over. But like Breece Hall had 118 rushing yards, and Garrett Wilson caught a touchdown pass. Allen Lazard was active after Rodgers, went out, and it's like, man, if that offensive line's good, maybe this team could be that big of a contender. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will cover the rest of the fallout from a possible Aaron Rodgers injury. So we mentioned Aaron Rodgers out for Monday night, ruled out within about 30 minutes of being listed as questionable, which is not what you want to see. I want to frame this as an if, because that is very important. This could be an ankle injury, and that could be it. And he could miss a couple of games. He could be back next week. I think that's pretty unlikely, especially against the Cowboys. If, as some people have alluded to, this is a longer-term injury. And I say if, and this is, again, important because we're gonna give you models from the Sportsline projection model that basically break down what would happen if Rodgers were to miss the whole season. This is just the devastating reality of it. The projections go from 9.6 wins, 50 and a 25% chance of winning the division, a 60% chance of making the playoffs, a 2.2% chance of winning the Super Bowl, to 5.8 wins with a season worth of Zach Wilson, a 0.9% chance to win the division, 4.7% chance to make the playoffs, and a 0.1% to win the Super Bowl. As you can see on the screen, it's just a massive downgrade. And that's the reality of last year. Breech does that feel like too much of a downgrade for you?
It might, especially if they escape Monday's game with a win. Then they're already...
if they win Monday, it might be worse, because then you're like, oh my God, what? Like, oh no, what if?
And by the way, we're recording this during the fourth quarter where the Jets are in the middle of a wild comeback. It's 13-all right now, so we don't know who's going to win, but obviously the projection there's 5.8 wins, and Zach Wilson's picking up 1/6 of those wins against the Bills. And that's the kind of thing that I'm sure Robert Saleh went in there at halftime and said, hey, look, guys, I know Aaron Rodgers is out. I know that we all thought that guy could lead us to a Super Bowl, but we still have a Super Bowl caliber defense, and we still have a lot of good skill players here, and there is no reason we can't go out and at least beat the Buffalo Bills, and we can reassess after that. And that's what it feels like. I mean, Zach Wilson hasn't looked horrible, and it's not like
Josh Allen has.
Yeah, Josh Allen has. That's the crazy thing. And so I do think that maybe, look, the Jets won 7 games last year with Zach Wilson as their quarterback, with Joe Flacco as their quarterback, with Mike White as their quarterback. And I don't think there's any reason they can't get at least 7 wins again, especially if they win week 1. So I do think the Zach Wilson projection is probably just an eensy bit low for me.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think 7 wins from last year, and plus Zach Wilson, you have to imagine, has gotten better learning under Aaron Rodgers throughout this whole offseason. He has been under pressure ever since Rodgers went out there. So certainly that is a concern, just given how, the offensive line, but that defense is pretty freaking good. And so again, the rumors about the injuries, I don't know. Do you think we've covered that? I don't want to harp on that too much, just because it's by the time, we'll know probably by Tuesday afternoon what the severity is, whether it is just an ankle sprain, a high ankle sprain, or the worst case scenario, which would be the Achilles, based on the people thinking out there that they saw a shiver with his calf upcoming for the Jets. As Breech mentioned, the Cowboys in week 2, the Pats at home in week 3, the Chiefs at home in week 4, at the Broncos in week 5, and then the Eagles at home in week 6. This is a brutal schedule.
Hey, I'd like to apologize to Stephen O and the guys at Sportsline. Now that I'm looking at this schedule, right. 5.8 wins makes a lot more sense, even if they win tonight, because poor Zach Wilson going up against the Cowboys defense, which obliterated Daniel Jones in the same MetLife Stadium Sunday night. Then you have to go against Bill Belichick, who you have not been good against if you're Zach Wilson. Then you somehow have to manage to win a shootout against the Chiefs, or hope your defense can hold them to 13 points on a Sunday night game. And then who knows with the Broncos, but the Broncos, have had
Denver in Mile High early in the season.
And then the Eagles. You got to play both Super Bowl teams from last year in a 3-week span.
Right, here's the possible silver lining to this brutal schedule. Let's say that it is a high ankle sprain that you suffer in week 1. And that's like a 4 to 6 week injury usually, right? You could make the case that with that schedule, they might win the same number of games with Zach Wilson as Aaron Rodgers. Maybe you win like one more with Aaron Rodgers, and maybe you win 2, whatever it is. But like that schedule is so hard that if Rodgers is gonna miss time, I don't know, miss time during that schedule and hope Zach Wilson steals a couple wins, and then all of a sudden you come back and try and make a push. Like I think that would be the argument that you hope for. But certainly a concern. And this is sort of tangent. I mean, it's tangential and it matters. This is the football show. But I think Mike Lombardi tweeted out correctly, the Packers won't get a first-round pick if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play 70% of the snaps this year. You miss 4 to 6 weeks, even 3 to 4 weeks, and it's pretty tough to play 70% of the snaps. That's just the basic math on a 17-game schedule. So, if you're I don't think the Jets will factor that in if Rodgers can come back and can play and is fine or is good to play or like whatever the outcome is. But I mean, certainly that matters at least to both of these teams because the difference between a first-round pick and a second-round pick, giving up a high one of those is a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, but if you're the Jets and you don't have Aaron Rodgers, you think your team's going to be bad. And so I guess if the silver lining for the Packers, you're thinking, well, if they're bad, the second-round pick will be high. Maybe we'll be picking 33, 34, 35, close to the back end of the first round. But, I don't think the Packers are even thinking about this right now because they're thinking, man, no one wants this.
I'm not saying anybody in Green Bay.
No.
Dang. Yeah.
Right. We're just pointing out that the trade had a conditional detail that Rodgers had to play a certain amount of snaps, and that's not going to happen if it's
I mean, if people get mad at us for pointing that out on a football podcast, so be it. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, you can see Lombardi's tweet got 10K likes. I mean, it is a and maybe it's a bunch of people quote tweeting and saying, how could you in this time of, but like, it does matter, it's a difference between a first round pick and a second round pick. All right. Anything else that we need to cover from the Aaron Rodgers injury on Monday night? We talked about it it's wild to have this, sort of slow first slate. Then things got a little crazy in the afternoon. Then you have the Cowboys just obliterate the Giants. And then this game, like if you could never call week 1 boring just based on the first 5 minutes of this or the first 10 minutes of this game.
Right. The one thing I will say real quick, and obviously by the time people listen to this on Tuesday, you could very well know what the Rodgers injury diagnosis is. But if he is out an extended period of time, I don't know that the Jets have many options if they want to go outside and get a quarterback because look, they are all in.
Tom Brady?
They are that. I mean, look, Tom Brady's a free agent, but he buying that stake in the Raiders makes it more difficult for him to be signed. I think that the owners have to vote whatever the 24-8 vote, at least 24 owners have to vote for Brady to be eligible to play. So that's one factor. And then
Robert Kraft also just waived the entry period, the time period to get into the Patriots Ring of Honor for Tom Brady.
Robert Kraft's going to induct him into the Hall of Fame at halftime when he's the quarterback for the Jets when they meet in a few weeks. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly.
But I will say, so outside of Tom Brady, which would be a super duper long shot, but my God, that would be crazy. You're looking at a trade they would have to make. There's Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton. Those are probably your best options, and none of those are great options. And this is coming from the former president of the Andy Dalton fan club. You could go back.
Debo put up a Carson. Wait, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is still free agent. I forgot about that. Debo with a Carson Wentz. Debo. Unbelievable. God. Carson Wentz.
Debo
former Super Bowl champion Carson Wentz. Phillip Rivers, if you want to throw a picture of him up there too, is technically a free agent. Joe Flacco is still a free agent, played for the Jets last year.
Flacco just said last week that he still wants to play and he's looking to get signed. I don't think the Jets are going to go back to that well, though.
And he's our colleague. So
Carson Wentz might be the guy, but
Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan said when he joined CBS, the NFL on CBS, and a member of the Paramount family, that he's like, look, I'm doing this, but this is not a retirement post. So he never officially retired. So Matt Ryan would potentially make sense as This is all obviously only if Rodgers misses, like is going to be out for a long period of time, and they know that. If, again, the big A injury.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like there's some big interesting names out there. It's tough to figure something out if you're the Jets. Zach Wilson is probably still your guy, but my goodness, what a twist and a turn Week 1 took on Monday night with the Jets losing Aaron Rodgers in their first game of what they expected to be an incredible season. Of course, we'll have much more content breaking down this Aaron Rodgers injury. Tune into CBS Sports HQ, your free live 24/7 streaming sports service, to get constant information on that. Paramount Plus, you can just watch it on there if you want. For John Breech, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.